Hello and welcome to the Teaching Our Kids podcast, a place where teachers, parents, everyone in between to come learn about how kids learn. Today we're going to be talking about parenting styles and how that can affect how kids learn in school, in unschooling, and just in general, parenting styles. Just do a quick overview. There's 4 of them. The first one I have written down is permissive parenting style, and that's like the friendship role where the child is in the driver's seat and there's not many rules, or if they are rules, they're not enforced. And a lot of times the parent will overindulge their child to avoid any kind of conflict or anything. They just give them whatever they want. So that is the permissive parent. Then
I
we
feel
have
a lot of cringe around that one.
It's hard. Yeah, it's like, oh, I mean, I feel like I have one of these that I am aim to be, and I feel like the majority I am, but there is times where I have that permissive moment where I'm just like,
yes, agreed.
hey, have fun.
Fine, do whatever you want.
Yes, I'm surviving now, so good luck.
Yes.
So the next one is the authoritative parent, which is parenting with a lot of natural consequences. This is like the best one. Everybody's gonna like how this one sounds. This is what I hope that I am majority of. But they solve problems as a team with their children, and they set clear rules and expectations. And there's open communication with the kid about, you know, life. They talk about apologizing and all those things together. So that's the authoritative parent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's everybody, that's the goal of
It's like the North Star.
for the end, like the goal to create the healthiest child, like emotionally and socially, is that. And then the next one, this is even cringier than the friendship role one or the permissive one, but the neglectful parent, where you're uninvolved, they're absent, there's no nurturing or guidance, and they're kind of like indifferent to the social and emotional needs of their child.
Mm.
So that's just like
This one
not
makes me sad.
even, I know, it's, yes, not even there. And then the fourth one is the authoritarian parent, the tough love. Parents are in the driver's seat all the way. They set strict rules and they have punishments, and there's only one way. Like, the parent is just always like talking to the kid. It's just my way or the highway. But they also have little consideration to the social and emotional and behavior needs of their child. They're just about the parent. It's all
I was going to
me.
say that, yeah,
Yeah,
the neglectful and this one really could
selfish.
easily be confused.
Yes, but this one is they're involved and they have a heavy passion for their children, but it's kind of in a negative kind of way because it's just a more selfish like
It's
way.
more about what the parent wants and the parent
And
controlling the child,
yes,
than
teaching your child
allowing
to be
the
a
child to
human.
grow.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Just like you're my kid. You got to do what I say, not like, "Oh, let me help teach you how to, be a person."
I think the authoritative.
Yes.
Thank you.
Authoritative is the
Yeah,
natural consequence. It's hard. I get those too.
authoritarian.
Authoritarian is the tough love.
Yeah, so I think the authoritarian one for us millennials is probably something that's more familiar. I don't
Yes.
know, for me it was. I think our parents having been parented much like that,
Mm-hmm.
they took that as that's what the expectation is, right?
Right.
That's how we're supposed to
Yeah.
parent.
Seen
And
and
we're
not
only
heard, and yeah.
exactly that children aren't people, right? They're not,
Mm-hmm.
they are, or maybe that they're not people, but they're less than adults,
Right.
right? They are not equal in the hierarchy, and
Mhm.
therefore the adult is better off and knows what to do and gets to tell the kid what to do.
Yeah.
In the authoritative, like contrastly, in the authoritative parenting style, it's seeing the child as an equal, and kind of allowing, just understanding that they're not as wise or don't have as much knowledge or experience, and therefore they're still a human, and giving them that room, that voice, that opinion to grow
Mhm.
and to kind of help them learn instead of telling them what they should know.
It's like the authoritarian or the tough love is more like, this is my job to parent you. Whereas
Yeah.
the authoritative or the natural consequence type parent, they're like, I want a relationship. This is a relationship, not necessarily a
Mhm.
relationship with my kid, not my job to parent, but my relationship with you is to parent you. So
And
I
it
think
seems
it's
like
like
this
a
is only becoming, like the maybe the permissive and authoritative parenting styles have only become, like, come around in past years, right? In the past few years.
or majority, like, because I feel like there's been people doing it since the dawn of time, but
Surely, yeah.
like the
The
societal
mass,
norm of it is
yes.
more like around,
People are,
yes.
yeah, more people are following this view. More people
Yes.
are becoming to understand that children need um more coaching instead of, and support through their
Mhm.
social emotions, in order to, like, based on really just, I would probably say, social media pushing out a lot of data that supports,
Mhm.
like, brain development of children. And like, we've talked about this before, but one of the most popular pieces of information that's come out is that the prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until they're like 25, right?
Right.
So if we know that, then how can we parent to that? So I
Right.
think social media, I mean, I see all sorts of parenting stuff all over my For You page on TikTok. um
Yeah. I mean, it's out there, and but the other thing is, like, also, like, we live in a world where some people don't have the time to absorb that, and they're like survival.
mhm,
Some people are just in survival mode, and like I said earlier, sometimes when you go in that permissive and you're just like, I'm done, I can't even just whatever. And so that's why some people like constantly live in a state of that, so it's hard to take on the more difficult role of building and teaching that social emotional piece that is so a part of the authoritative natural consequence parent. Like, it
yeah.
takes a lot of work emotionally, mentally, like physically, even you get tired, like it's a lot. And when everything else in your world is hard, it's harder to do that. So
Mhm.
definitely that's why some of those other ones are easier. Like, it's easier to be the authoritarian tough love. When I say goes, that's it. Like,
Yeah.
it kind of sometimes that's like an easier thing to fall into. And the same for the permissive and neglectful. Like, I'm just, yay, whatever, I love you, I want to be your friend. Like, it's easier than setting a boundary and teaching a boundary sometimes and doing
Mhm.
it in a, child driven kind of way of teaching that boundary. It's hard.
It is, and
So,
I tend to toggle between, permissive is like my last resort when I'm like, it's Sunday and I'm just done and I'm
mhm,
dreading Monday coming up, and I just, like, no patience or energy to make a decision anymore, right?
right.
But on a day-to-day basis, I strive to have an authoritative approach where I am talking regularly with my children about the decisions and the consequences that come from those decisions. um, and we work together to solve problems as a family as we're traveling, around doing our homeschooling as a group of four. Not everybody gets their way, and
Right.
how we have to give and take and all of that. But my go-to, because of my upbringing, when I don't have the patience, because kids are tough, like, they've got those big emotions when they're young,
Mhm.
and when they don't get their way and they scream and lose their cool, I immediately, if I don't have that patience or we're like on a deadline, I go into authoritarian.
Oh yes.
Like, I split.
Me too, girl.
I'm like, Wait, hold up. Who are you talking to?
Yeah.
Because I've like strived as a parent to not say because I said so, and I'm like, because
I have a sort of good example for this.
Mm.
So yesterday was Mother's Day, and
Happy
did,
belated Mother's
yeah,
Day.
same to you. We had a big breakfast, and then like we had like friends around, neighbors, and like we kind of missed lunch, and then we had dinner. And Lily's very picky, and she has celiac, and so food is always kind of a hard time. And she
Yeah.
ate some dinner, but not a lot. And then they had some video game time before bed, and she got off, and she was like, I'm hungry," and I was just, "You could have had more dinner," and I'm like, "Why?"
Right.
And then she could have asked me earlier, but she didn't say anything until after she got off the video games. And I said, "Well," and then I offer all these things, and she's like, "No, no, 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 no." And I'm like, "Well, are you hungry, or do you want like a sweet? Are you having a sweet tooth moment?" She's like, "Well, it's both." And I'm like, "Well," and then I broke down, and I was like, "Okay, you can have an Oreo, and then we're gonna go up and get in the shower." Well, we had 2 packs in there, one of which was the double stuffed and one wasn't. She didn't realize that, and we usually always get double stuffed. She got the regular, and she was like, "I don't want one of these, one of the thin ones." And I was like,
Ooh.
"Oh, girl, I gave you an Oreo, and you're about to throw a fit about that." And I just took her upstairs. I was like, "You're getting out of the shower," But
Right.
also, so I freaked out for a minute. And I took her up there, and I was like, "This is for me and you." Like after I had my authoritarian tough love, you're like, "We're going," I was like, "We need to calm down a minute and think about what you need for your stomach, and I need to calm down because you didn't get
Right.
lunch today. Like it was a weird day."
Yeah.
So after I got her in the shower, and we decided on, toast and like a little snack, and then I let her have an Oreo. But like I had to like have that moment of like, we gotta go, rah! And then I was like, okay, reel it back in, Ash.
I want to add something here. I want to
Yeah.
add something. Well, maybe I'll ask you a question first. When she like wigged out, right, and threw the
Uh-huh.
Oreo, what were you thinking? Like, what did
I
her
was like,
behavior say to you in your brain? Like, what was your brain telling you she was saying?
I was just like, I don't even know. My brain was like, blah. Because I'm like, you got a sweet treat. Like this is you've been crying, you don't know what you want. Okay, I want an Oreo, and then it like because it doesn't have the extra cream is like,
Were you thinking that she was your brain telling you like she's being ungrateful in this moment? I just gave her what she asked for and she's wigging.
yes, yes. I mean, but really, she's just like struggling because she's hungry, probably.
Exactly.
And
But
that's what
this
I was.
I just want to put the pieces together
Yeah.
because we were parented in a more authoritarian way,
Mhm.
right? It was that we were taught to believe that children's behavior is like the equivalent in theory to if we as an adult had behaved that
Mhm.
way, right?
Right.
Which is ungrateful, disrespectful. But that's not what it
Right.
was. And in that moment when we are so heightened, our we automatically go back to that like original
Yes.
way of parenting that is ingrained in us. And it takes so much practice and energy and freaking time
I know.
to get out of that thought, like you said, when you went upstairs and
Yeah.
like chill and
Uh-huh.
bring yourself down and get to a Zen place so that you can then address the
Right.
need, which is hunger. But without people thinking about that or seeing like even like understanding that, right?
Mhm.
They skip right past that root need of the child at the moment,
Right.
which is they're just hungry. They're not being mean to you. It has nothing to do with you.
Right.
And then they teach their kid like when they're hungry, they don't get fed,
Right.
right? Like so
But
there's like
I do really like. That's why I kind of border on that authoritarian sometimes, because I think she needed, like, maybe she didn't need a stronger reaction, but she still needs to have a reaction for me like, this is not acceptable right now. Like that's why I took her. I was like, we need a break. You need to go. Like I have to calm down. We gotta. But
yeah,
then me also giving her the understanding of, I know that you're hungry and we
Right.
need to solve it without, and talking about it, as opposed to just going straight to, like, you're going to bed, you're not eating,
Right.
like,
Right. I mean, they need to understand your boundary of it's not
mhm,
okay to throw food in this house.
right,
Right? Like that's not cool.
mhm,
And that has to be set clear and sound. And I'm definitely on the same page with you. It's hard to get through that in that authoritative moment
right,
because of that heightened emotional state for both of you.
mhm. I also, I don't know, I just think about my parents, and I think, I don't know, my dad is so laid back. And my mom's pretty laid back too, but also she's a little bit more stricter than he is. So, like, I don't know, there
Yeah.
was just times, I think they definitely leaned more to the authoritative natural consequences for us.
Hmm.
Um, but there were still, that tough love times there. So,
Right.
but yeah, I wanna bring it to school a little bit, since we could keep going and talking about this and giving examples of life. But just for school, I wrote some little notes on these different parenting styles at like, and how a kid would maybe have a hard time at school if they were parented in this way. Like, for example, um, well, first, let's just start off with that authoritative, with the natural consequences. I mean, and that's what ideally a school would want to be like. And as a parent, you'd want the school to treat your kid that way, solving problems with the kid, and have
Mhm.
clear rules and expectations for your kid, and open communication with you as a parent and your kid about what's happening at school. Ideally, that's what you would want. So a kid who is parented in the majority this way, I think, would do good at school if the school is, you know, has a strength in that, with their parents still guiding them in that way at home, and then the communication with school. So that would be, obviously, that's the ideal one. And then you have the authoritarian, the tough love, um, kid that's being parented that way. I feel like school could kind of be easy for them too, because they're
Yeah.
used to, towing the line. Um, so it could be easy, but also could be a safer place for them. Like, maybe school, if school is more like authoritative and has expectations and communication with the kids, so maybe it might be safer. Maybe they might act out a little more at school than they would at home, because they feel like they can more
Right.
there.
Or maybe they find that they are able to have a voice at school
Right,
versus at home. I think
right.
the opposite is true for the authoritatively parented child because you run into circumstances where, if the kid wants to have a conversation about a situation,
Mm-hmm.
about a direction that they dislike or, aren't into, a teacher doesn't necessarily have time. Sometimes you
Right,
just got to do what you're told. And
right.
and in a setting with 30 kids,
You
that,
can't take it. You can't take the pause moment to stop and talk about, that feeling. And yeah,
right, like, all right, put your suggestion in the box and we'll have to
yeah.
talk about it at the end of the class, because if I had a conversation with even just 5 children at the length my conversations tend to be with Tegan,
You
we'd be
would
at the
never
end of the school
survive.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real. So that makes it tough. I agree. And that's why I said with, like, parental guidance, because there's definitely a lot of times my kids, we come home and they talk it out with me about stuff that happens at school.
Hmm.
Maybe not necessarily with the teacher, but like with their peers and stuff like that, or with like discipline that happens at school. Like, I help them talk through it
Right.
and guide them through it. Um, so it's helpful. But if you go home and you want to, like, talk to your parent and they're like, "No, just do what the school says," the
Right.
grown-ups are the boss. It's not paying attention to that social emotional piece, since that's strict one way. Um, and then just for the permissive parent, the friendship role, type of parented child, when they go to school, that can be tough too, because they're like, "Oh, I get to do whatever I want. Mom's my best friend. She says I don't have to do my homework. She says I don't have to share my whatever with." So that can be tough.
Well, you're neglecting the
Yeah,
child, like
giving them
you're
a
neglecting
boundary.
the like just acknowledgement of uncomfortableness.
Yes.
Like the feelings, all of the feelings are going to happen to every human all of the time. And you can't just bend at the uncomfortable and difficult
Yes.
because that though in you have to have just as much, if not more, skill to process those emotions as you do the easy, happy ones, right?
Yes.
Like everybody's striving for their child to be happy all the time, but they need to have the upset.
Right.
They
Oh
need
my
to have
gosh.
the disappointment.
So much. One of the biggest ones lately I've been doing is waiting. Harry like wants all these video games and he gets a lot of stuff instantly. He really does. Because video
Mm-hmm.
games, I mean, you can buy it online and it's instantly there. You don't have to wait. Like, and I'm just like, you have to learn how to deal with that discomfort, like you said,
Yep.
because a lot of life is waiting for things, and you just have to learn how to find some happiness and do other things while you're in that moment. And yes,
Right.
that is definitely what the permissive parenting style lacks and makes hard for school, like waiting and discomfort. I agree. Um, and then the neglectful parenting style for kids in school. Sometimes that could go wildly one way or another, I think, because maybe it's hard to deal with an authority figure if there's if no one's ever
Mm,
telling you what to do, why am I going to listen to you? No,
yeah.
no one ever tells me what to do. I do my own thing. And then, or it could be that extra guidance is like, that school that gives the boundaries and the guidance that school does have could like really help that kid
Right.
um
I
thrive
think you also,
more.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, go ahead.
I think also you have, I mean, with neglect, you just have such, and probably with the permissive too, just such high risk of um a concern, not a high risk, but like a really large concern for the social emotional development of the child
Mhm.
because they don't have an adult there to walk through their feelings or to help
Right.
them understand the emotions
And
that they're going through.
school doesn't necessarily have the support, ability, funding, whatever to give that extra bolster to that they need. Like they do a lot, but if you're trying to
Right.
teach them the academics and everything, and they're so deficit in that social emotional because the parenting style, it definitely is a
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah, I think those authoritative and authoritarian are probably most in line with traditional schooling.
Mhm.
Um, and work the best. But I'd agree that my North Star is always the authoritative.
Yes. I mean, that's the one everybody aims for, and it sounds nice and ideal, but it's definitely hard.
Hmm.
Sometimes you just got to like have that let it go. Like, all right, I'm gonna give you that Oreo right now because you're hungry. But
But I think we also have to keep in mind we might be missing something here that just because we give in, right? Our belief of giving in is that we're not holding the line. But
mhm,
what in that moment when we give in, we're showing flexibility
right.
and
It's still a
and
teaching moment.
an understanding of a need. Like sometimes
Right.
I just want Oreos too,
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what I
right?
told her
Even if
to.
I had five of them already,
Uh-huh.
or if I haven't had dinner. And by allowing my kid that moment doesn't mean that he's learning not to be in that discomfort
Right.
because there are so many other moments during the day. I
Mhm.
promise that he's been uncomfortable. Um, but I think that maybe we're taught that if we aren't strict and stern and stick to the rules all the time or stick to
Mhm.
what we say all the time, that that is giving in or permissive. But I don't know that is the case. I think it's, just being genuine and treating the kid again like a human and
Yeah.
not as like a lesser than adult.
Right. For sure. But it is, I agree. And like that's the same with like like I did say I was told her. I was like, "I am sorry. I am upset right now." I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"I need to calm down and then we will come back and try and solve the problem of how you're feeling right now. But we need to go." And that happens
Can
to
we
me a
talk
lot.
about that for a minute?
That happens to me a lot because I'm always like going, I want to move. We're not moving, like make this decision so we can move to the next. And like, and if they can't, so sometimes I'm like, we need to move over here for a minute and we'll come back to that because I am too like, and so I try and do that sometimes too, or I try and like busy myself while I'm letting them figure it out. So I'm not like, figure it out.
Well, I think that's like common. We're always go, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
With children, we have a busy schedule, but also society tells us that we should be regularly accomplishing, completing.
Mm-hmm.
We should have a clean house. The kids should be eating dinner at this time. They should be in bed at this time. Don't be
Mm-hmm.
late for this practice. Make sure that like we have a lot of standards that we're probably unconsciously trying to keep
Yes.
up with as parents. And so when we have that running in our minds, if we're not present because of all of that, it's just really easy to slip
Mm-hmm.
and get entangled in our own agenda and kind of neglect what's going on with the kid emotionally. But I think it's really important to apologize as a parent when you realize that you screwed up,
Right.
because that again was not, I mean, not nothing against my parents, but I didn't hear I'm sorry for my parents a lot, right? Like if
Right.
I pissed them off, or if we had a moment, like it was my fault that they blew up
Right.
because I behaved in a way that made them blow up. But
Right.
that's not really the case, right? And so to show our kids that when we're wrong, apologizing and kind of humbling ourselves is a great way to move forward with the
Right.
relationship. You're teaching them a huge social emotional lesson,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
especially from an authority figure, not even
Yes.
just right for their friend, but like they have to kind of hold other authority figures, and I would hope in their life, to those same expectations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. About for unschooling, like I know you said you lean to
Mm,
that authoritative natural consequence, and I think that's a lot in unschooling because again, a lot of even your learning is all like natural, like it's not any forced. So a lot of it tends to be that way. But like, I don't know. I couldn't imagine a neglectful parent doing unschooling. I feel like they would. That's what some people sort of
yeah.
imagine that unschooling is neglectful. Like you're just leaving your kid, they're not doing anything. Like, but that's not the case. But I feel like
Yeah, it's
sometimes
funny.
that is, or
We have
permissive or neglect. Like I feel like people tend to think that's the parenting style for that choice.
So there's
Don't.
so much wrapped up in this conversation. I'll say that you can parent children any way
Yeah.
in unschooling, right? Like that's
Yeah.
up to you. It's going to be really hard to do if you're. I would say it'd be really hard to do if you're neglectful. Um, but I think anything would be hard to do with a child if you're neglectful.
Yeah.
I tend to find that a lot of parents in my unschooling world are, unschooling is progressive as it is. So I think a lot of parents are more progressive when it comes to their parenting style
Mhm.
in that group of folks. So I find a lot of like gentle parents, a lot of authority,
Mhm.
and that's kind of in line with
Authoritative.
authoritative.
Mhm.
Um, but ultimately, one of the reasons for unschooling is just to have a tighter bond with your kid
Right.
and allow them to move at their own pace. So I think that authoritative parenting is really, it would be kind of odd to see an authoritarian parent unschooling,
Yes. I agree.
because that's not really like, we're not telling our kids what to do. We're just letting them kind of roll with the punches and show us what they're interested in. I think in traditional homeschools with parents who are following curriculum should probably be more likely to find authoritarian
Mm-hmm.
parents. Some parents might be more permissive there, or even neglectful, just shove a book in front of their kid and say go for it.
I
But
do think that authoritarian, I think it could be like they might even be so strong they don't even want the school. I don't want the school or the
yeah,
government telling me, this
yeah.
is my and so I could see that definitely being still used for unschooling too. But I
I
do
do want,
think I know we just talked about in the very first episode when we were talking about people's perceptions of unschooling versus
yeah.
schooling.
I have to
Like people just think a lot of it is that permissive. Like you're just let them watch, do whatever you want, and it's just not. Like I've said before, like the amount of work that you put in just for that social emotional piece alone, which like is what brings everything else along, is so much. So it is not. I just wanted to like make that like that can be a stigma for that choice
Yeah,
that you've made, and it is not, what
we've
you're
heard a
going
lot
for.
about it. I mean, we hear it
Yeah,
frequently, and it is definitely a misconception of
yeah.
unschooling that oh, your kids don't want to go to school, so they just get to do what they want. You don't hold
Mhm.
them to any sort of. No, my children, like, they have expectations during the day. We get to make, just last night, I was asking the kids, what do you want to do this week, right? They get a say in what we do. Um, there's a lot that they say they want to do, like go to the arcade and the candy shop. That was on that list. That doesn't mean we're doing it, right?
Yeah.
Can we play electronics all day? Nice try. We'll get electronics at some point.
Uh-huh.
Um, so just because unschooling is child-driven learning doesn't mean that the
Right.
child is,
In
um,
charge.
I mean,
Completely.
they're in charge to a certain extent of what they consume, but they're not the only driver, right? Like they got a
Right.
learner's permit. That's how I'll put
But
it. They've got the
you
learner's
set
permit.
the boundaries, the growing and learning boundaries to help them become
Yeah, right.
instead
When
of
they when
just
they
nothing.
they're driving, meaning
Yeah.
they're outside playing, they're inside doing their toys, building a
Right.
fort, whatever, outside of the stream with their friends. And when they encounter a situation where they get stuck, if we're comparing this to driving, I
Mhm.
don't know how to make a U-turn. They come to me, they look for some help or some
Right.
guidance, and I'm going to give them the information to finish the
Mhm.
job. But it's certainly not you get to do whatever you want to do whenever you want
Right.
to, because we also operate as a team, right? A family, and as a group with our other homeschoolers. So there's a lot of toggling and responsibilities and contributions that come with that. So I I do think that it's regularly confused for neglect or permissive parenting. But that's the last thing it is.
Right.
And after parenting or unschooling last week with a terribly ill 18-month-old who was clinging to my shoulder or screaming the whole week, I can promise you that there's nothing neglectful or permissive about unschooling, because
Yeah.
it was one of the most challenging weeks of my
Right.
life.
For sure. It's definitely a lot easier for me to send them to school. Have my break.
I mean,
It's
listen, don't let me make you think that I did not talk about public schools with my children last
yeah.
week, and and
You are
maybe
making me consider this, kids.
maybe give them some sort of ultimatum about whether they're going to school or not.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, but yeah, thanks for highlighting that, because I really want to make sure that if anything, if anyone listening to this takes anything away about
Mhm.
unschooling, it is that it's not permissive. It's
Right.
not just all willy-nilly letting the kids do whatever they want. Like there's a lot of
Sure.
good in letting your child decide or show you what they're interested in, and kind of flourishing through that.
And like this is like the corner piece of this whole like podcast series even to me is like just the comparison of the schools and
Mhm.
just giving people an idea of what unschooling would be versus public schooling. And if you want to make this choice for yourself, like, here are the things to consider, like, and your parenting type and what you might lean more towards or whatever is a big thing to consider, and how
Yeah.
it, how much work is actually in it if you want to create a, human being that can function in the real world. So it's
If you want
definitely,
to, I thought I already did that part. I already created the human
I
beings.
mean, that will function healthily,
Yeah.
emotionally healthily. But yeah, so it's definitely very cool, and I love talking about all this stuff, man. So
Well, hopefully the authoritarian parents, the permissive parents, and the neglectful parents don't come for us. We're
oh,
just
no.
talking.
I think sometimes I think they don't even know.
Yeah, I
They don't
mean,
even think about it. So
to each their own. I think that
yes,
if you are struggling as a parent with, with parenting, that the best thing you can do is just educate yourself
right.
about, and maybe kind of look inward about, and
Yes,
not just pinpoint your kid as the issue. I think,
self-reflection.
yeah, you might
Totally.
find something.
Yes, for real. And like I said, we just want to be here to help give people ideas and maybe help you self-reflect. So
Yeah.
make the best choices for your kiddos.
You know what, Ash? You have to have what if somebody doesn't know what type of parent they are?
I know. Maybe I should try and make a quiz for that too. That would be crazy. I'll
That'd
have
be
to
a good
think
one.
about that. I might
Yeah.
have to.
Bring on the parenting
The
style
parenting
quiz.
style quiz. All right. I will work on that. That's a good idea. But yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Becky. All right. Well, thank you for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Ash.